Spider-Man, Edge of Time. Oh boy, where do I begin with this game? I'll be honest, I really did not have any expectations when it came to this game in particular, because I remember when I first saw previews for Edge of Time and how much it just looked like a repackaged Shattered Dimensions. And that game didn't really leave the world's most glowing impression with me, so I kind of chose to bypass Edge of Time just due to the nature of that game. It wasn't up until a few years ago where I actually managed to find a copy of Edge of Time in my local GameStop, and I was like, well, if I'm doing a Spider-Man series of reviews, I might as well play all of the games, and so here we are.
Believe it or not, these Beanox titles are somehow incredibly hard to find, which I find comical. But the asking prices on the internet for some of these games are absolutely insane, especially considering the quality. The game was being heavily marketed on being able to play as two Spider-Man, one from the present and the other one from the year of 2099, as well as the death of Spider-Man. This is, what's the word? Dumb. The death of Spider-Man is something that you shouldn't force in for the sake of marketing. If your game has enough substance, it can be an incredibly moving moment in the story if it isn't being telegraphed like it is here, because we all know these guys aren't permanently going to kill off this character and is going to be brought back to life. Especially if said event is happening within the very first 15 minutes of your game, and is even being mentioned on the back of the box, and on top of that being marketed, and so on and so forth. Seriously, what if The Last of Us did this? What if in that game, when Joel gets impaled and is seemingly dead, the back of the box for the game says, oh, by the way, you play as Ellie here now too, and Joel's not actually dead, by the way, lololololol. Just, what the hell? Good grief, did I go on a tangent there? Sorry. That just chaps my ass. It's a big moment these guys seemingly wasted. That won't be the last time you hear me mentioning something being wasted, by the way. We have quite a bit of ground to cover, so don't worry, we'll get back to that. Plot-wise, this game is a gigantic mess. It uses time travel as its primary thread, and as said before by many others, including myself now, time travel as a primary plot device can go one of two ways. It could either be incredibly good and well thought out, or an absolute confusing mess, and Edge of Time is the latter. And to go into detail about that would mean spoilers, so skip ahead to this point in the video if you care about that sort of thing, though this game is as old as dirt now, so you really shouldn't. But nonetheless, let's move on. We start off with Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man from the year 2099, investigating an Alchemax scientist by the name of Walker Sloan, who in this game is voiced by none other than Val the Iceman, Doc Mother Shockin' Holiday, Bruce Harvey, and Batman Wayne Kilmer. Easy for me to say. We'll get back to Val in a minute. Spider-Man 2099 witnesses Sloan's plan coming to fruition, in which he attempts to go back in time and relaunch Alchemax way before its time so he can reshape the company in his image. In his attempts to stop Sloan from going through the time travel portal and changing time, O'Hara fails and is stuck inside the portal while witnessing Peter Parker's death in his current time, and then is seemingly spat back out after that into a very different 2099. Being unaffected to the changes of time due to being stuck inside the portal, O'Hara is now desperate to change things back to the way they were, and the only way to do that is to seemingly link up with present-day Peter Parker, who now works for Alchemax in the genetics division via a chronal link, and warn him about his impending death in an attempt to alter the future. The warning, of course, goes on deaf ears because Spider-Man has to Spider-Man, and the result is a big old fight with a Sloan mind-controlled anti-venom who drains Peter of his powers and nearly kills him. That is, of course, until Miguel Ex Machina seemingly webs Peter's body from the past and transports him to the future to revive him via a convenient restoration pod egg. Yep, that happens. Miguel then goes back in time toward the present day to deal with Sloan and anti-venom, and in that fight, Miguel wipes the floor with anti-venom, it's not even close, and breaks him free of his mind control. Brock, who is now pissed at Sloan for his treachery, charges at Sloan and Octavius, who is working with Sloan somehow? Wait, what? And they all go through the portal destabilizing it, and never to be seen as individual characters ever again. Why?
Why? Why? Why? Why? Why?
Why would Beanox and Activision go through all of this damn trouble to have Val Kilmer, freaking Val Kilmer, voice a character in their game and have him be there for a cup of coffee? They even marketed part of this game behind his inclusion, and he is gone almost as fast as he was introduced. What an absolute colossal waste. What was the point? You could have had anyone else fill that role and it still would have been an insult to the talent of that actor. This is what you call stunt casting. You cast a famous actor on your project in the hopes that the publicity gained from having said name attached to your project will boost its notoriety to the public, but regardless of such, the handling of Kilmer's role was such that if you were actually getting this game to see what he could offer, you'd probably turn it off as soon as you realized, well, he's not coming back. Which again, is within the very beginning of the game. It boggles my mind. It's not to say that Kilmer's performance was terrible by any stretch of the imagination, because it's Val freaking Kilmer. The guy is an amazing actor, and given what he was tasked to do here, he does a commendable job, and it doesn't seem like a phoned-in performance. But it's just that for what I can imagine these guys paying to get Kilmer to even take this role, versus what he actually does, it's hard to justify the amount of time he's in the game. I feel like that money could have probably been better allocated to the game's overall budget to improve things, or add in more features, but we'll get to that bridge when we cross it, trust me. Anyway, back to the story. With Peter in the future and Miguel in the past, both must work together to restore the timelines to the way they were originally meant to be, while also helping each other out in a few high-stress situations here and there. It's here where we're introduced to the game's really wacky gimmick called quantum causality. Basically, things that happen in the past will immediately affect the future. It's a fancy way of saying cause and effect. So if someone seemingly takes out a wall in the past, in the future that wall will just cease to exist. It's trippy stuff, and it makes zero sense, but I'm going to give the game props. It commits to the idea fully, though not entirely, because, how do I break this news? The game's main villain is not this monstrosity, which I swear is an homage to Monster Rock, and you can't convince me otherwise. Nor is it Walker Sloan, because he was paid for 5 minutes and he's out of here. Or even Otto Octavius, who shows up for no reason. The main villain of this game, the master puppeteer and engineer of the game's events, is the Alchemax CEO of 2099, who is in fact revealed to be none other than Peter Parker.
It looks like, for the sake of this review and probably your ears, I might actually have to activate a shocked mode, because this is going to get pretty dicey pretty fast.
You mean to tell me that the genius idea for this villainous Peter Parker was to have a guy go back in time and change history and kill his younger self? Wouldn't that mean that future Peter Parker would have ceased to exist? How shocking stupid is this guy? Okay. Maybe his plan wasn't so much about letting Sloan kill him, but knowing that Miguel would save Peter and create this weird time warp, allowing him to harness the quantum storm energy to reshape the universe in his image, like he says his plan is, which still makes no sense, but we'll move on. That still doesn't explain the shocking fact that in knowing that, Peter would also have to know that past Peter and Miguel team up to thwart his plan, rendering this entire scheme useless. Holy shock. If he had enough foresight to know where this was all headed, he should have known that this plan was also bound to fail. Especially when CEO Parker tells Miguel that he knows who he is because Peter in the past did. So God, this plot makes no shocking sense. But here's the kicker. Making Parker the CEO in 2099 the main villain of the game essentially creates a goddamn time loop, because keeping past Peter alive means that he eventually grows to become CEO Parker in the future, and the only solution to that problem would be saying that this is a different universe, so a different Parker. But again, CEO Parker knows who Miguel is, meaning they are the same person. And regardless of the fact that Peter now knows what his future holds, this is not enough to change what is seemingly meant to happen in the future from happening. What the shock game?
Look, I can stand here all
shocking
night ripping this game's plot a new ass.
Shock.
But the reality of the situation is, it is a very much so convoluted mess, and any serious insight to the plot of this game is bound just to create confusion, anger, and resentment. So it's best for my own damn sanity that we move on.
I feel bad for Christopher Daniel Barnes and Josh Keaton. They really are the saving grace of this game's story, as they both carry it with really solid performances. I just wish everything else about this game plot-wise was as enjoyable as the interactions that these two Spider-Man have. But the real meat and potatoes of this game is its gameplay, and upon a glance, one could compare this to Shattered Dimensions and call it a near-carbon copy. And yes, it's true. It does use a lot of assets from the former game, from its animations to its combat mechanics and enemies, but some of the combat options have actually been reworked to give them different purposes and utilities. For the most part, the game is exactly the same as Shattered Dimensions, however. But this time around, the polish on the combat and mobility side of things is actually well done. If you had taken this game's level of polish and given it over to Shattered Dimensions, I actually would have thoroughly enjoyed that game more, to be honest. That being said, the main problem with Edge of Time is its overall depth. One would think that with 2 lesser Spider-Man to develop for, the team at Beanox would have gone all out and properly fleshed out the 2 different Spider-Man with a plethora of unique moves combining things from the last game. But the only thing that was lifted were certain animations, and most new things that were added aren't substantial enough to really make much of a difference. Dodging in this game has been given an overhaul from the last game, and instead of it being a skill-less one-button hold mechanic, it's once again tied to a meter for both Spider-Man. Admittedly, while I hate dodging or the ability to being relegated to a meter, I actually don't mind it as much here because I do think both are well executed enough. The problem, once again, is that you now have to play the meter management game, and for the sake of overall combat flow, it's intrusive because if you run out, you're going to take a hit, and no one wants to get hit once they start flowing. And it's usually going to be at the expense of these annoying-ass shield enemies who knock you back and stun you for a few seconds upon hitting you. Because that's great, when the game just takes all control away from you. These guys are the worst. You can upgrade the meter, however, by finding hidden spiders, which return from Shattered Dimensions, either hidden throughout the level or acquired by performing various special tasks. I hate this so much. Because now, instead of rewarding the player for playing the game via something once again as simple as an XP bar, we now have to go up and down and all around to try and look out for these hidden spiders to have the opportunity to unlock health regen and reflex bonuses. This is awful. Who wants to spend hours playing hide-and-go-seek in a Spider-Man game? Thankfully, the game sort of lets you know when you're in the vicinity of one with an icon that flashes on your screen, but regardless, locking upgrades behind easily missable golden spiders is an awful design choice. But the kicker here is that these upgrades are specifically tied to hidden spiders. The rest of the combat upgrades are tied to what's called portal energy, in which you gain by defeating enemies or collecting within the level or finding stashes in computers. So basically, this is an XP bar. What the hell, Beanox? Why make the system complicated more than what it should be? Just leave both to portal energy and make the health and reflex upgrades cost more. Moving on. While the overall polish of the game makes the combat a more enjoyable experience than before, Beanox is still struggling with how they design their missions here, as a lot of what you're going to be doing as both Spider-Man is running into open areas and defeating waves of enemies that randomly generate keys to unlock you to the next area in which you need to hit some switches to progress to the next area and so on and so forth. It gets old fast. Every now and then they vary what it is you do, but the core of what you're doing never truly changes, and it results in a very homogenized experience no matter which Spider-Man you're playing as. It's absolutely baffling to me that one of Shattered Dimensions' most praised levels and concepts by the way of Spider-Man Noir had absolutely zero of its mechanics brought over in this game. A change of pace like that and an introduction to some more swift and polished stealth mechanics could have definitely helped this game feel a lot less stale by the upteenth hour you're playing it. Speaking of hours played, the game is really short. Shorter than Shattered Dimensions, I feel. But what the game lacks in length, it more than makes up for in content, and oh boy, yeah, does it have some content. The game has a plethora of unlockable suits, of which you can actually gain by simply having played Shattered Dimensions, which is a neat way of saying thank you from Beanox, and this is pretty awesome, so kudos to them. The other method is by completing challenges in the newly named Web of Challenges. It's basically the Web of Destiny from Shattered Dimensions. Completing certain challenges on the grid grants you access to a key, which you can then in turn redeem for a brand new suit unlock. A lot of these suits are awesome and should be very familiar to those who have played Spider-Man PS4, or pretty much a lot of these other Beanox-related Spider-Man games. And hey look, you can even play as Miles Morales' Ultimate Spider-Man suit, or even as civilian Peter Parker, which game developers still to this day don't understand that this is what fans partially mean when they say they want to be able to play as Peter Parker. The implementation of the Web of Challenges in this game is actually superbly done, and I'm going to give Beanox all of the praise here. The Web of Destiny in Shattered Dimensions was one of the more annoying things to keep tabs of, because if you missed a challenge, you would essentially have to replay that entire level over again, just to get back to that specific portion to attempt said challenge. I admittedly was really worried upon seeing the Web of Challenges because it seemed like more of the same, and I really could not be bothered trying to replay entire sections of this game for a single challenge just to unlock a suit. But I was surprised. It seems like they knew how arbitrary that process was in Shattered Dimensions and instead made it easier here in Edge of Time. You can access this screen at the main menu and highlight a specific challenge, and then the game will take you to the direct moment that that challenge starts, making it easier to accomplish these challenges. Which, yes, thank you, Beanox. This is a vast improvement, and I actually don't mind doing these challenges as compared to before. It adds in some slight replay value, And it works towards some sweet unlocks while also bolstering your not XP bar for upgrades. And if you screw up, you can always restart the challenge. This is well done. So props to the team for correcting a huge mistake the last game made. On top of that, there's an arena mode, which is basically a survival mode. You start off with your base moves, and upon completing waves, you're granted more XP to unlock more moves, and golden spiders to unlock health and stamina upgrades. If you enjoy the combat in this game, this is sure to scratch that itch without having to repeatedly go back and play the story. Overall, Edge of Time is a mixed bag, because while there are a lot of things that just boggle my mind and frustrate me to no end, like the repetitive mission structure and the overly complicated and nonsensical plot, the overall combat and the polish given to that and the mobility do help make the game a more enjoyable experience, but not exactly the best one. And the changes that Beenox has made in certain areas does prove that they are indeed improving and refining their structure and listening to criticism, which is all you can really ask from a developer. Add on top of that the extra content and a game with two of the best Spider-Man voice actors to ever don the mask, and you have yourself a mostly enjoyable experience if you can look the other way to its pretty big shortcomings. While Shattered Dimensions was a rather rocky start, Edge of Time is a more refined experience, if not a little familiar, causing a lot of the backlash some seem to have for it. I came into this game expecting not to really like it. A lot of people seemingly hate this game, and I thought I was going to fall under that umbrella too. And don't get me wrong, I'm not in love with the game, not by any stretch of the imagination. Well, maybe just the way the Amazing Spider-Man looks and how battle damage the suit gets throughout the game. That is just beautiful. God, so good. But just given the negativity given to this game whenever it's brought up, I expect it to at the very least come away with a more negative impression. But honestly, I'm mostly torn on this game. I don't feel the way I did with Shattered Dimensions. Not entirely. I feel like this is a game I can come back to every now and then, though rarely, because it's a lot more accessible and it doesn't feel like a marathon like Shattered Dimensions did, even though it is lacking in a lot of areas. The suits are plentiful, and if you want to just kick it and do combat things, you could do the web of challenges and always try to go back and beat your high scores, or just go into arena mode and just beat goons up. And it just feels like there's more to do than go through 30-minute levels that all lead to the same thing. It feels like a game relying less on its novelty, although not completely, and more on its gameplay. And that's where the game shines the most, despite not changing things up nearly enough to make it a truly robust, enjoyable experience. So I guess I, kind of like Edge of Time a little more than Shattered Dimensions. Sorry, Internet. Please don't kill me. Is this where you guys grab pitchforks and chase me off this platform? Well, I guess so, huh? Yikes. Well, if I don't get impaled, I hope to see you guys in the next video where we look at The Amazing Spider-Man. Oh boy. See you guys then.